LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the August 21st edition of LiberalViewer Monday Media Mixup. Thanks for joining me. I picked out the 13 best, most newsworthy clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, for what should be really educational, informative, fair use media criticism and political commentary show for you all today. As you can see from the video title, it's kind of a double Trump topic. It's Trump will skip Republican debate, get booked on felonies in Georgia. And those seem to be the two big stories, in addition to two big weather stories, or Hurricane Hilary that hit Southern California yesterday and today, and then the continuing aftermath of the Maui wildfires. You'll see that in the news summaries when I get to those. But I'll mainly be covering newsmakers talking about the Republican debate and Trump's legal troubles. Of course, on Fox News, they'll try to intermix those with Joe Biden's legal troubles, which are really Hunter Biden's legal troubles with no connection to Joe Biden, which I'll talk about when I get there. And the debate is coming up on Wednesday. Donald Trump is not going to attend. Maybe he's too busy getting booked and getting his mugshot taken in Georgia this week. I don't know. But I do have a couple pieces of political comedy about Trump and the debate. The first one is Paul Begala talking about the fact that Trump has decided to do a little bit of counter programming. Oh, Paul Begala was like a political advisor to Bill Clinton many years ago, for those of you who are old as I am. And remember Paul Begala back from those days. He's sort of like the junior James Carville. I don't know. Here's Paul Begala, though. He was like the jokester on CNN's State of the Union that was hosted by Kasie Hunt again yesterday. And here's his joke about the counter-programming, where Trump, instead of going to the debate, is going to do an interview with Tucker Carlson on Twitter. And I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
I find it interesting, by the way, instead of going to the debate, he's going to do, he's with some fired cable host on a failing platform. I think the next debate, he's going to be with Bill O'Reilly on MySpace. I mean, I actually, if I worked for Trump.
MySpace still exists?
That's my point. Twitter doesn't either.
But folks, is this thing on? Is this that? That joke didn't really play that well. He got more laughs at the end of the segment when he was talking about Trump's cult of personality and his always talking about himself, which I will talk about a little more after we watch Paul Begala's second joke. Went over a little better. It's the best political comedy I can get with no writers writing for any of the comedy shows. So anyway, here's Paul Begala. I don't know, better joke? You can tell me what you think after we watch it together over here.
When's the last time Donald Trump talked about the things even Trump used to talk about? The border or immigration
Right.
But it's all, my joke has been, he's like Pavarotti warming up for the opera. Me, but never you. But it's working because the party's become a cult of personality. Right. And good luck taking on that personality. Right. I hope you do, but good luck.
We are unfortunately out of time, or I would let you continue with your opera singing. Who wouldn't want to listen to that? Thank you.
Kasie Hunt snuck in with a little joke of her own there, but I mean, that's what passes for political comedy these days when there's no Saturday Night Live, no Daily Show, no Late Show with Stephen Colbert. You know, all the Jimmys are off work. It's tough times for political comedy, but I'm doing what I can to provide some to you in these drought months of writer strike and actor strike. And anyway, that's the first couple introductory political comedy clips, and now I'm going to show you the news summaries from longest to shortest. And the longest news summary, and this is because it's a two-part news summary from CBS News Face the Nation. Margaret Brennan introduces it. Then Mark Strassmann talks about Hurricane Hilary, which I thought was way overcovered. And I live in California. I grew up in Southern California. Here, where I am in Northern California, Hurricane Hilary didn't. I mean, it was cloudy and there was a little drizzle, but even for, I mean, I guess there's some people in some desert areas that got a lot of rain they weren't used to, like Palm Springs, Death Valley area, but the thing is, and then the Maui wildfires also are covered here in a second segment from the same reporter as last week, Jonathan Vigliotti. Uh, but this is part of my ongoing criticism of the corporate media for covering weather instead of climate. The word climate doesn't come up in this report. Global warming comes up, but it's again from the governor of Hawaii, Josh Green, bringing up global warming as like what's behind this, first tropical storm to hit Southern California in 85 years, and the uh, fire hurricanes that you saw the governor of Hawaii, Josh Green, talk about last week in my Monday Media Mix-Up. But anyway, that's why this is so long. It's 7.5 minutes. I wanted to show you like all the coverage, but how it's part of this sensationalistic bias of all the media, where they want to focus on if it bleeds, it leads. If there's like compelling footage of a disaster, they'll talk about it, even though they don't really talk about the important causes like climate change and the number of people dying. I mean, it's 100 something now from the Maui wildfires. I don't think anyone died that I saw from Hurricane Hilary. At least I haven't seen it reported yet. Meanwhile, like a few hundred people die every week still of COVID. And if you hang on to my final clip, it's going to be Scott Gottlieb talking about maybe bad times for COVID ahead. But we don't really cover that because there's no like disaster video that will bring in the viewers and the eyeballs and the clicks. And anyway, that's why this is such a long segment. I want to show you how Face the Nation did it, and afterwards I'll explain again why it's almost completely wrong. And I'll talk about that a little more after we watch the clip together over here.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. As we come on the air, Hilary is a weakened Category 1 hurricane and nearing landfall. We begin this morning with meteorologist Kelly Cass from our partners at the Weather Channel.
Good morning, Margaret. Hilary, no longer a major hurricane, but it's still a major threat when it comes to its impacts. First for the Baja of California into Mexico, but then eventually working its way up into Southern California, packing some winds of at least 50 miles an hour. And the rain, I think, is going to be the worst problem. So there are your tropical storm warnings, very rare to see. In Southern California, you've got LA right on down towards San Diego. And you can see the path of the storm. This is the cone for the center of Hilary. There will be impacts on either side of that cone, especially the flooding rain, but the gusty winds that could also knock out power as it continues to track into Southern California. By about midday, San Diego up towards Los Angeles, you can see the heavy rain really begin to fill in, and especially for those higher elevations, the burn scars. Where we've had fires in the past, we could have terrible mudslides and landslides to go along with that heavy rain and flood threat. Look at the widespread yellow on the map. That's 3 to 5 inches for these areas that typically don't even get a trace of rain this time of the year. This is our dry season, and there will be some spots where we see even more than that, 5 to 8 inches, and that's why we have this high risk of flash flooding from eastern California into Nevada as well. The high wind warnings are also in effect from the southwest all the way up into the Great Basin. These winds could exceed 60, even up to 70 miles per hour. And unfortunately, we can't rule out the possibility of some tropical tornadoes that come in with some of these outer rain bands of Hilary working northward throughout the day today. So, Margaret, a very busy day ahead. We hope everybody stays safe.
Indeed. Kelly Cass with the Weather Channel. For more on the extreme weather across the country, here's Mark Strassmann.
Hilary's now hammering Mexico, and soon why Southern Californians could feel like South Floridians. Tropical storms are rarities here. The last one, 1939.
It's crazy. Never seen anything like this, and I've lived here my entire life.
Forecasters predict the storm could dump up to a year's worth of rain in one day. It's another 2023 weather moment. Extraordinary, ominous, and one many experts pin in part on our changing planet. On Maui, charred and scarred, two words improbably share the same space: Hawaii and hellscape. The latest death toll, 114 and rising. Most of the fire zone has now been searched. The governor says climate change helped fuel those flames.
The consequence of global warming and storm change is changing things. But we've never had anything like this near a city.
Winds from Hurricane Dora, then south of Maui, pushed fires across an island suffering a flash drought.
It took less than a single day for us to lose Lahaina in the deadliest fire our country has seen in more than a century.
Heat records keep falling like sweat. By some measures, all of us just lived through the hottest July ever. NOAA's tracking temperatures, and it pays to grab some shade. Through July, the agency says there's nearly a 50-50 chance that 2023 goes down as the warmest year on record. In Washington state, near Spokane, a new wildfire forced thousands to evacuate and prompted a state of emergency. The mayor of Medical Lake warned people, get out now. And the middle of the country, from the northern plains to Texas, already swelters under the summer's most expansive heat dome. Temperatures up to 20 degrees above normal. With this year's weather-related events, the abnormal seems constant. Ask people living along the San Diego-Tijuana border this morning, with a tropical storm bearing down.
It's our Mark Strassmann reporting. We'll speak with the mayors of two cities in the storm's path momentarily, but we turn now first to Maui. 12 days after the wildfires devastated the historic town of Lahaina. Our Jonathan Vigliotti reports.
470 search and rescue agents with the assistance of 40 cadaver dogs are combing through this American Pompeii. More than 3/4 of this 5-square-mile disaster zone have been cleared, X marking the spots already checked. But more than 1,000 people are still missing, and there are more businesses, condos, and entire neighborhoods to go. What rescuers are finding speaks to both the scale of destruction and the county's failure to issue evacuation orders.
This is Front Street. Without a proper evacuation order, people in a desperate attempt to outrun the flames got into their cars and took to the road. But the fire quickly caught up, and you could see the desperation in how these cars are lined up. We're talking dozens as far as you can see. There was so much panic as the fire hit.
Many tried to flee into the ocean, while Governor Joshua Green described the firestorm that swallowed Lahaina as a bomb going off. There was a very long fuse as the fire burned in brush for nearly 2 hours before exploding, spreading a mile a minute.
I realized when it was time to go when the smoke was so dark, we could not see anything outside.
The state attorney general announced an investigation into Maui County's response before, during, and after the disaster. And on Wednesday, CBS News learned the man in charge of activating the sirens intentionally did not.
Do you regret not sounding the sirens?
I do not. And the reason why...
So many people said they could have been saved if they had time to escape. Had a siren gone off, they would have known that there was a crisis emerging.
The sirens, as I mentioned earlier, is used primarily for tsunamis.
The explanation given by Herman Andaya, head of the Maui Emergency Management Agency, was defended by the mayor and governor until survivors and the world weighed in.
Do you think had those sirens gone off, it could have saved lives?
Absolutely. I don't think, I know. We all are prepared for that. We know that sound. People are not dumb. People know what to do.
Andaya resigned the following day, citing health reasons. Now there is mounting anger as more questions go unanswered. Did downed power lines cause the blaze? And why weren't they deactivated? Also, why did it take up to 3 days for help to arrive after the fire?
There's an airport right up the road. Why isn't that being used? There's an ocean front 20 feet from our lobby. Why are we not using that?
Today, there's not just an active search for the missing in what is now the deadliest wildfire in modern American history, but demands for more accountability.
It's Jonathan Vigliotti in Lahaina. We go now to Hawaii's Governor Joshua Green.
And I showed a clip of Josh Green last week from MSNBC, and I think he had some good things to say. The one part of that Face the Nation News Summary I thought was effective was the criticism of the response. You know, last week I talked about how Fox News was like had this knee-jerk reaction to blame like the Democratic governor and the Democratic Biden administration and their FEMA administrator, Deanne Criswell. But there are something, especially the power company and the failure to deactivate the lines. Here in California, we have PG&E that was responsible for some huge wildfires, and that bears looking into. But kind of like I pre-criticized the clip before I showed it, you saw there were like a few vague references to global warming attributed to the governor of Hawaii, and our changing planet, like the planet's changing. No, we are changing the planet. Nothing about like human induced climate change, nothing about putting too much carbon in the atmosphere, just global warming, and something about our changing climate. And there was like very vague references to the real cause of the problem, much more emphasis on the death and destruction and the people, people crying, if it bleeds, it leads, or if it cries, I don't know, something that rhymes with cries. Sorry, I should have worked that out before I made that analogy, or whatever, or made that criticism. But anyway, you know what I'm talking about. They really focused a lot more on the effects, the impact of this particular piece of weather, and not really the bigger picture. I mean, they did talk about the hottest July and the hottest ever, and they're kind of like giving you some of the important information, but the real important information is not in there. And that's why I showed the entire 7.5 minutes. By the way, down in the video description, you can go to the under sources. I put the sources of all my clips, and the Face the Nation YouTube channel that is linked down under sources there. Starting several weeks ago, on Mondays they post the entire Face the Nation episode, so you can watch the whole thing on your own and come to your own conclusions. Face the Nation did not really cover my topics at all. The Republican debate, barely. The Trump legal troubles, barely. It was really only when they got to Anthony Salvanto and their pollster, they started talking about how the Republicans were polling, but I didn't take a clip of that. Instead, like I said, at the end, I'll have Face the Nation doing their job as the COVID broadcasting system, CBS's COVID broadcasting. They were like the first and the best reporting on the pandemic back in March 2020. I've talked about this a lot. And they have Scott Gottlieb giving us some warnings about how COVID's not over. In the last clip, I'm going to show clip 13. But now I want to get to the next news summary. This is Fox News Sunday. They focus on the Republican candidates and the Republican debate. Nothing about Trump's legal troubles. And then they spend some time talking about Hurricane Hilary. Fox News has been talking about Hurricane Hilary a lot. I think it's because they like to say Hillary is destroying things in California. I think it's like an old, Hillary Clinton evil subtext that they want to put into Hurricane Hilary. But it's sort of in this story, but also, of course, nothing about climate, global warming at all. And anyway, I'll talk about that. So yeah, this is Shannon Bream from Fox News Sunday, live at the Iowa State Fair or whatever. Craig Herrara on Hurricane Hilary, and then Alexis McAdams doing an in-depth look at the Republican presidential candidates. And I'll talk about that clip a little more after we watch it together over here.
Hello, today from Des Moines on site at the Iowa State Fair. This is one of the most famous stops for presidential candidates as they try to win over savvy Iowans. And they've been here in force over the past few days, along with thousands of other fairgoers here for fun and also looking to question the contenders in person. Just 3 days from now, millions more will get to see the top candidates together for the first time on one stage. This is a live look now at Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee, where Wednesday night the candidates will face off in the first Republican presidential primary debate on Fox News. Film and Brett Baer, and probably each other. Much more to come from the fair, but first, we want to touch on some breaking news. Hurricane Hilary barreling towards Southern California. This is a rare occurrence. Forecasters say it is bound to make the history books as the first tropical storm to hit California's coast in 84 years. We turn now to Fox Weather meteorologist Craig Herrara, live in San Diego, where storm preps have been taking place over the last couple of days. Hello, Craig.
Hello, Shannon. Yes, already seen a washout here in Southern California, San Diego included. This is the day that students should be preparing to go back to San Diego State University or San Diego Unified, the second largest school district in the state of California. But instead, we've got a lot of rain behind us. And as we go into the weekend, some places across Southern California may get more than a year's worth of rain in just 24 hours. So this has been a major concern as we've been watching Hilary over the past couple of days. In fact, out in San Diego, the sun was out for a moment at times on Saturday, giving folks here a chance to fill their sandbags, prepare for some possible flooding as well. And the emergency response teams out here, which is a group comprised of volunteers, they're ready to go in any type of natural disasters. They're on standby and ready to go right through Monday as well. Meantime, we do have a flash flood threat. And when you look at this, you're talking about a level 4 out of 4 to see some flash flooding. Goes all the way from the U.S.-Mexico border, clear up into portions of Death Valley. Huge amount of rain could fall in some of these spots across the deserts. 8 to 12 inches of rain could lead to some flash flooding. Meantime, Southern California not used to this much rain in the month of August. One state that is used to quite a bit of rain is Washington State. Meantime, they are dry. Portions of eastern Washington are seeing some dry conditions, and a fire burns there, scorching nearly 10,000 acres near the town of Spokane. It's dubbed the Gray Fire. It has been reducing visibility over portions of eastern Washington, also bringing the air quality down as well. Shannon, we'll continue to follow these stories in Washington as well as Hilary as it moves into Southern California. Heavy rain expected not only for San Diego, Los Angeles, Riverside County, but also the Coachella Valley near Palm Springs. And already the city of San Diego closing all beaches, city parks, and public buildings today through tomorrow.
Craig Herrara and the team over at Fox Weather got you covered. Craig, thank you so much reporting from San Diego. Back now here in Iowa, where the Republican hopefuls have been making the rounds at the fair. Fox News correspondent Alexis McAdams catches you up.
Bacon pecan pie. Sounds good.
The 2023 Iowa State Fair. Always full of fried food and fun.
2 on the stick, 1 spicy, 1 original.
But the main course is politics.
How's it going in Iowa?
Going great. Beautiful place. We love it. We love Iowa.
The fairgrounds turned into the main stage for the Trump show, with the former president handing out pork chop sandwiches to the crowd.
Feel like you're pretty popular in Iowa?
I guess so. This is the biggest crowd they've ever had, they say. So I love them and they love me. That's a good combination.
Just steps away, Ron DeSantis hit the bumper cars with his kids. And in the sky above, a small plane carrying a banner with the message, "Be likable, Ron." An ongoing dig at the contender.
Do you think you're a likable candidate?
I think that's a narrative, but you know, when you have Trump doing that, he's got so many people that would never vote for him, and I've seen that in Florida.
Unlike Trump, DeSantis sat down for the Fairside chat with Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds, though he was briefly interrupted by 2 hecklers.
You know what? We're in Iowa, and in Iowa, we're Iowa nice. So let's give everybody the opportunity to hear our candidates.
He opens his mouth, but the words won't come out.
Vivek Ramaswamy had a mic drop moment of his own.
I think they can tell the difference between who's real and who's not.
Former Vice President Mike Pence worked the crowd.
Do you think Americans are ready to see a fresh face in the White House?
I think Americans are ready for Joe Biden to leave the White House.
And Senator Tim Scott let his personality shine.
You're a popular guy out here at the Iowa State Fair.
Praise God. Yeah, I mean, I tell you, I love people.
Miami Mayor Francis Suarez says Iowa is all about meeting voters face to face.
I think for me, as a candidate that's not as well known as some of the other established candidates, it's incredibly important for me to personally connect with people.
As Nikki Haley walked around wearing cowboy boots and a T-shirt that said, "Underestimate me." That'll be fun.
Because strong girls become strong women. Strong women become strong leaders.
Big crowds, big names, and a big year for these candidates.
That was Alexis McAdams reporting right here in Des Moines. And joining us now from Philadelphia, someone you just saw in that piece, Republican presidential hopeful Nikki Haley. Governor, welcome.
So, yeah, that was the Fox News Sunday news summary that I pretty much pre-criticized, both in terms of the concentration on Hurricane Hilary, which that's not political bias. That's this uh, bias for sensationalism or like disaster weather events. Although, as I saw people discussing in the live comments, the Hurricane Hilary didn't end up being that big a deal, and they tried to make it sound worse than it was by talking about like desert areas that we're going to get like a year's worth of rain in a day, which is like 3 or 4 inches of rain, and that's why they're deserts. Or anyway, but you also notice they covered the whole Republican candidate thing without ever talking about any of Trump's legal problems. I will show you a little bit later how they did cover Trump's legal problems, but of course, when they did it, they have this whole like way they mitigate it with like both sidisms. Here's like a preview of the of a chyron of their panel. Legal problems plague both frontrunners in 24 elections because Trump being indicted for over 90 felonies is the same as Joe Biden's son being investigated and possibly having to plead guilty to a few charges that don't involve Joe Biden at all. That's really an honest way to frame that, right? Now, that's the whole reason they have this whole Hunter Biden investigation in Congress, is to try to create this sort of both sidism. But anyway, actually, one of the best coverage of actual breaking news on Trump's legal problems is in this next news summary, ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, and that's because they actually had some news to break that doesn't happen that often from these like flagship news shows on Sunday morning. But ABC broke news about things that Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, told investigators about the Mar-a-Lago documents case. I mean, it's not on the Georgia indictments. You'd think there'd be more coverage of like the fourth Trump indictment, given, I mean, it should be big news. It happened this week, and these programs only happen once a week. So you'd think they'd be covering more up front. At least you'll see Jon Karl starts off talking about it and even has like a little thing that says fourth indictment. But then goes off into their breaking news, which is also kind of interesting, and I'll talk about it a little more after we watch that news summary together over here.
And welcome to This Week. In just 3 days, Republican presidential hopefuls will face off on a stage in Milwaukee for the first debate of the 2024 campaign. But the man who could be center stage plans to skip it, saying there's no reason for him to be there. Donald Trump, though, has plenty to do outside of that debate. He was indicted for a fourth time last week, this time by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, for allegedly heading up a criminal enterprise to overturn the certified and repeatedly verified results of Georgia's 2020 presidential election. Trump's lawyers are working out the terms of his surrender with Willis. It's expected to come sometime before the Friday deadline set by the DA. One of the key figures in the Georgia indictment is the man who was so frequently by Trump's side during those tumultuous final weeks of his presidency, Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Meadows is also believed to be a central figure in both of Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigations, the alleged mishandling of classified documents, and the election interference case. As one piece from the New York Times put it this weekend, Mark Meadows is everywhere and nowhere, a visible ghost, because so little is known about what he has had to say about any of this. But this morning, for the first time, ABC News can report key details about what Mark Meadows has told federal investigators about the classified documents case. From the moment federal authorities revealed they had found hundreds of documents marked classified at Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump has insisted it was all declassified, something he repeatedly claimed in the months that followed.
So when they left the White House, they were declassified. I took what I took, and it gets declassified. And by the way, they become automatically declassified when I took them. Everything was declassified because I had the right to declassify.
But Mark Meadows, the man who served by Donald Trump's side as his chief of staff, has told investigators He was aware of no such broad declassification order, according to sources familiar with the matter. The sources tell ABC News Meadows told investigators that he had no idea Trump had brought classified documents and other official records with him to Mar-a-Lago, and that when the documents were first requested by the National Archives, he offered to help Trump go through the boxes he had taken from the White House to find and return official records. Meadows, according to sources, said the president did not accept his offer. One of the key pieces of evidence in the case is an audio recording of Trump allegedly describing a classified document he appears to have in his possession as he was being interviewed by a writer and publisher who were at his club in Bedminster, New Jersey, for Mark Meadows' book about his time as chief of staff. Meadows was not present for the interview.
This totally wins my case, you know. Except it is like highly confidential, secret. This is secret information. But look at this. This was done by the military, given to me. See, as president, I could have declassified it. Now I can't.
ABC News has reviewed an early draft of Meadows' book that describes Trump talking about the document, allegedly a 4-page war plan prepared by Joint Chiefs Chairman Mark Milley. On the couch in front of the president's desk, there's a 4-page report typed up by Mark Milley himself. It shows the general's own plan to attack Iran. The draft reads, when President Trump found this plan in his old files this morning, he pointed out that making this declassified would probably win his case. But those words did not appear in the final version of the book. According to sources, Meadows told investigators he directed that the reference to Trump possessing a classified war plan be taken out of his book, and that he knew it would be, quote, problematic if Trump had such a document in his possession. A Trump campaign spokesman responded to our new reporting by accusing the DOJ and special counsel Jack Smith of, quote, selectively leaking incomplete information without providing evidence, and called the investigation a witch hunt meant to hurt Trump's political campaign. Joining us now, our legal team, former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Preet Bharara, former Trump Justice Department spokesperson Sarah Isgur, and first, let's turn to ABC.
And that last person there, by the way, Preet Bharara and Sarah Isgur are, I think, gave really good legal commentary, and down at link in the video description, you can watch the whole program. You know, they also put up transcripts. That's one thing I found really useful. Here, you can hear in the live comments, I will, in the chat, you can read the whole ABC News transcript of this week with George Stephanopoulos, Jon Karl, and talking to the panel there. But like I said, one of the reasons I thought that that news summary was like the news summary of the week is because they actually broke news, and it was Catherine Faulders. That's her name. Sorry, I'm just looking through the transcript. Yeah, Catherine Faulders, the ABC's senior reporter, Catherine Faulders, broke that story about basically, it sounds like she got an interview with Mark Meadows. The Trump team, as you saw at the end of that report, was claiming that the special counsel leaked that, but that was pretty clearly Mark Meadows talked to ABC, and you know, well, I don't know, I suppose it could have come from the prosecutor. As a former criminal defense attorney, I know that prosecutors leak to the press all the time to try to spin their cases and make them look good and taint the jury pool, so it's not like I'm going to be someone to defend a prosecutor. So yeah, for all I know, that part might be true, but I just thought that that was a rare example of one of these flagship corporate news programs actually breaking news on Sunday morning. And even though they mostly concentrated on the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case, you saw at the beginning of that report, they actually talked about how Trump was indicted in Georgia of creating this criminal enterprise, you know, which is almost saying it was a Georgia RICO case. And for trying, you'll notice they said trying to overturn the legitimate, verified election in Georgia. I just wanted to point that out to juxtapose it to the Fox News Sunday news summary on the one where they talk about the legal problems on both sides. That's going to be coming up in like 3 more clips, and they do briefly mention the Georgia indictment, but they just say they don't tell you any of the charges, just trying to overturn the 2020 election, make it sound like, he was like filing lawsuits and, doing all sort, not really what you just got in that ABC report. So I wanted to point that out. The next longest news summary, this one, I got a lot of long news summaries. This is NBC News Meet the Press. Chuck Todd, I think he's almost done. I think he only has a couple weeks left, because he said sometime in September he'd be turning it over to Kristen Welker. So here's Chuck Todd talking both about the upcoming first Republican presidential candidate debate and the beginning of the 2024 campaign, talking about both Biden and the Republicans. In the 4.5-minute news summary, I will talk about with you a little more after we watch together over here.
A good Sunday morning this week marks the unofficial kickoff of the next phase of the 2024 campaign, as at least 8 Republicans competing to take on Donald Trump will meet in Milwaukee for the first Republican debate. Trump plans to skip the debate and instead is reportedly counter-programming in an interview already taped with former Fox host Tucker Carlson. Of course, it used to be that extramarital affairs, campaign trail tears, forgetting a cabinet agency, even a weird scream could end a presidential campaign. Now Donald Trump has been criminally indicted 4 times in as many months, faces 91 felony counts, and he still leads the Republican field nationally by nearly 40 points. And outside of New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, who's polling at 3% in a new Quinnipiac poll, and to a degree his former Vice President Mike Pence, Trump's Republican opponents, for the most part, are declining to take him on directly.
We've done over 80 town halls in New Hampshire and Iowa. And Eric, not one of them are asking me about Trump. Not one of them are asking me why I'm running against him or anything else.
I think that these indictments are a disaster for the country. And I say this as somebody who just looked at the polls that have come out in the last 24 hours. I'm polling second in many of these national polls. It would be easier for me if Trump were eliminated from competition.
Instead, in a pre-debate memo from Ron DeSantis' super PAC, advises him to take a sledgehammer to Vivek Ramaswamy and to defend Trump when Christie inevitably attacks him. Of course, the Republican candidates are terrified of alienating the Trump-supporting voters that they'll need to win by criticizing Trump. But show us the campaign where an underdog beat a dominant frontrunner by not taking on said frontrunner directly. In an interview with the Florida Standard, DeSantis took a swipe at Trump's cult of personality inside the Republican Party. And the swipe immediately got Trump and his allies to lash out.
You could be the most conservative person since sliced bread. Unless you're kissing his rear end, they will somehow call you a rhino. If all we are is listless vessels that's just supposed to follow, whatever happens to come down the pike on Truth Social every morning, that's not going to be a durable movement.
Already this morning, the Trump campaign is trying to weaponize that phrase, listless vessels, trying to compare it to the famous basket of deplorables comment from Hillary Clinton in 2016. Trump is systematically right now attacking the prosecutors and judges in his cases, and there are new threats of violence. A Texas woman was charged with threatening to kill the federal judge overseeing the 2020 election case here in Washington, D.C. And Trump supporters posted the names and addresses of the members of the Georgia grand jury who brought back that indictment against Trump. And after promising a major news conference on Monday to release what he called would be an irrefutable report proving the 2020 election fraud, which of course has been debunked in dozens of court cases, on Thursday, Trump canceled the event. He cited the advice of lawyers. This is a reminder that anything he says in public could be used against him in a court of law. In a Quinnipiac poll this week, an overwhelming majority of Americans, 83%, said they are worried about the system of democracy being able to function here in the United States. President Biden was elected to restore the soul of the nation, in his words. A vote for Biden was said to be a vote to get rid of Trump. But Trump has made it clear he's not going anywhere, and he's still here. Now just 24% of Americans say they want Biden to run again, and just 30% want Trump to run again. And as Trump has been indicted again and again and again and again, Biden has chosen against taking him on in any meaningful way right now. That choice, and the choice of top Republicans to stay silent, has left a massive moral vacuum in our fraying democracy. Who is defending the guardrails? This morning, the Biden campaign is defending the president's record in a new $25 million ad campaign, which will run across battleground states.
There are some who say America is failing, not Joe Biden. He believes our best days are ahead because he believes in the American people.
Those who bet against America are learning how wrong they are.
And joining me now is one of the Republican candidates who will definitely be on that debate stage in Milwaukee on Wednesday night. It's North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum.
And I actually will have a clip of that interview with Governor Doug Burgum. He's one of the Republicans who doesn't want to talk about the Republican frontrunner being charged with over 90 felonies. He wants to leave that to the pundits or whatever, but that'll come up soon. That there, you saw that whole DeSantis controversy about the listless vessels. I don't even understand what that's supposed to even mean. Listless vessels. That is a phrase that, I mean, it seems like it was pre-planned, but if you were going to come up with something as like people who are, it's basically, he's referring to Republican politicians who are like taking orders from Donald Trump. They're the listless vessels. That was kind of ridiculous. And that whole news summary was more about the political campaign and not that much about the substance of the charges. You know, remember, since I did my Monday media mix-up last week, Trump was indicted with this whole RICO, you know, with 18 co-defendants in this far-ranging conspiracy and RICO criminal enterprise. That happened Monday, and at least Meet the Press was the one news summary there to point out that Trump claimed he was, this morning, was going to hold this big press conference to prove that he won the Georgia election and present all this evidence, and then Thursday he canceled the whole thing. So at least Chuck Todd reported on that, but not really so much on the substance of what was going on in Georgia. I mean, if it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press, and you should be telling us the most important stories of the week. And that, I don't know, I think it had too much political spin on it. You can let me know what you think in the comment section. As I get to the final news summary, thankfully, all the rest of these were like 4.5, 5, even I showed you 7.5 from Face the Nation. Kasie Hunt on CNN State of the Union kept it to 42 seconds, basically about Hurricane Hilary and Maui wildfires over here.
Hello, I'm Kasie Hunt in Washington, where the State of our Union is bracing for impact. Hurricane Hilary is barreling toward the west coast of the United States and could dump more than a year's worth of rain on Southern California, where the storm has forced evacuations, closed beaches and parks, and prompted the governor to declare a state of emergency Saturday. President Biden says his team is closely monitoring the storm's path as they also prepare for his visit tomorrow to survey the devastating Maui wildfires, where painstaking search efforts are still ongoing as FEMA confronts a record-breaking year of billion-dollar disasters. And joining me now is FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell. Administrator Criswell, thank you so much.
And Kasie Hunt does ask about climate change, at least, but it didn't show up in the news summary. And I don't know if those two weather events are really the top stories. I mean, you can let me know what you think in the comment section. Now I'm actually going to show you the two more Fox News Sunday clips. These are the ones I was talking about earlier. You know, I showed the whole Fox News Sunday news summary where they talked about Hurricane Hilary and they talked about the Republican presidential candidates. Didn't say anything about Trump's legal troubles. Well, didn't mention Hunter Biden either, I guess. But the other thing about that is Shannon Bream had two Republicans on for interviews. Nikki Haley, Republican presidential candidate who used to work for Trump as UN ambassador in the Trump administration. And then the governor of Iowa was also on. Did not ask either guest one question about Trump's legal troubles, the indictments this last week, whether Trump legitimately lost the 2020 election. None of that came up anywhere in the show except in the panel discussion I'm about to show you. There was first introduced Shannon Bream and Lucas Tomlinson did this like a little bit on what happened to Trump. Like I said, indicted in Georgia for the fourth time for trying to overturn the 2020 election. Nothing about like what you saw on ABC with, criminal enterprise to overturn the legitimate and verified election. Just very brief. And then on to Hunter Biden, who's apparently is getting less charges while Trump gets more charges, even though the charges, what they should have been reporting is the charges had to be dismissed because he might have pled guilty to these tax misdemeanors and waived the fact that they were improperly charged because it was in the wrong venue. Fox News calls it jurisdiction, although my understanding was actually a venue problem. And anyway, I pre-criticized the clip that I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Welcome back to Fox News Sunday, live from the Iowa State Fair. The legal twists and turns facing the two frontrunners for the White House are grabbing plenty of attention heading into the first presidential primary debate. We're going to break all of that down in just a minute with our panel back in Washington. But first, let's go live to Fox News correspondent Lucas Tomlinson at the White House to get you up to speed with all the latest developments. Hello, Lucas.
Shannon, former President Donald Trump is expected to turn himself into the Fulton County Jail this Thursday or Friday. It's the fourth time since March he has been indicted.
We look at the facts, we look at the law, and we bring charges.
Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis bringing 13 new charges against former President Donald Trump and others against 18 of his allies, including his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and Rudy Giuliani, accusing them of helping Trump try to overturn the 2020 election. A new Fox News poll says 53% of voters think Trump did something illegal, including 62% of independents. Trump now faces a total of 91 felony counts across the four indictments.
They're all very similar in the sense that there's no basis for them.
Not everyone is on board with a local district attorney prosecuting a former president.
The agenda of that state elected official from a red state or a blue state might interfere with my best in the national interest.
While Trump is facing more charges, President Biden's son is facing fewer. A federal judge in Delaware dismissing the two misdemeanor tax charges against Hunter Biden. Newly appointed special counsel David Weiss can potentially bring more charges in another jurisdiction. President Biden defended his son back in May while the investigation was ongoing.
First of all, my son's done nothing wrong. I trust him. I have faith in him.
Friday, the president appeared to change his tune when asked about the appointment of the special counsel.
I have no comment on any investigation that's going on. That's up to the Justice Department.
Negotiations for a new plea deal could stretch for months. The White House would prefer President Biden is on the campaign trail, not the witness stand. Shannon?
Lucas Tomlinson reporting from the White House. Lucas, thank you very much. It is time now for our Sunday panel.
And I'll show you the panel in a minute, but and I pretty much pre-criticized that clip. It didn't really go into the details of what Trump was charged with in Georgia, trying to overturn the election. A little over half of Americans now think Trump did something illegal. But later in this next clip I'm going to show you, Shannon Bream, you'll see, talks about, like, she combines the illegal and unethical with the illegal and unethical for Joe Biden in relation to Hunter Biden, which I don't want to pre-criticize the next clip too much. But one thing I forgot to mention was in that last clip that I found, like, totally galling was after they showed like a black woman coming after Trump, the DA in Atlanta, Fani Willis, then they had to show someone saying, it's inappropriate, and they show John Woo, and John Woo, if you probably don't remember, but I can never see John Woo that law professor from the Hoover Institute or whatever at Stanford, I believe is where he's working. And he's just lucky to have a job because he is the dude who justified torture under the George W. Bush. He wrote like the torture memos that justified. I mean, speaking of people who should have been prosecuted after they left government office, I mean, John Woo, I think maybe that's why he is like, we shouldn't give too many prosecutors the ability to prosecute people who commit crime, like maybe he's worried someone's going to find some way to prosecute him for those torture memos. I don't know. But I just also had to point that out. And now here comes the panel discussion where you'll see Shannon Bream. First of all, she tries to like totally downplay the Georgia indictment. It seems like eons ago, even though it was just Monday. And there's all the both sidism, eventually you are going to see this legal problems plague both frontrunners in 24 election. And they do have this woman from Bloomberg who points out that the indictments are helping Trump in the primaries, but probably not in the general election. The guy on the right there, Kevin Roberts, then makes this bogus argument I debunked last week about how a special counsel has to come from outside the Justice Department. And then kudos at least to Fox News and to Fox News contributor Juan Williams for actually, this is like briefly at one point on Fox News Sunday, someone says some true things about how it's not really comparable what Donald Trump and his 90 plus felonies versus Joe Biden's son having engaged in a bunch of scuzzy conduct when he was having problems with drugs that don't involve Joe Biden in any way that's been proved at all. And of course, Shannon Bream has to like try to immediately come back and say, well, Republicans say they're going to have evidence. And kudos to Juan Williams for saying, yeah, thanks for proving my point that they haven't come up with any evidence, have they? And and then there's the whole riggers thing that I only heard about from Juan Williams. I'm not even sure what that is, and you don't even know what it is, but we'll talk about it a little more. Watch for the word riggers in this clip, and I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that clip together.
Let's start there with all of the. It's hard to believe that this week was actually the fourth indictment for President Trump. It seems eons ago, but because it was Monday. But the truth is, this is now ramping up. We're waiting to see him turn himself in for processing. I talked to Asa Hutchinson, the former governor, who, by the way, says this morning he's made the thresholds to be on the debate stage, and that he says, by the way, he'll sign the pledge. I asked him about that Friday. It didn't seem like he was clear on that, but he says yes. It sounds like he's going to say because he thinks President Trump is not going to be the nominee. But I asked him, as a former federal prosecutor, all of these cases going on, trying to run for president, how do you manage this? Here's his assessment.
No, and that's the reason he should, for the good of the presidency and our country, step aside.
But you know he won't.
Well, he won't, but he should. So those in Iowa, those in New Hampshire, probably Super Tuesday states, are going to have to vote with all of this cloud over someone who's currently the front runner. This puts the voters in a terrible position. They're going to have to make a decision. Our democracy is counting on them to get it right.
But our poll shows us that he is leading, Peggy, by 37 points against the next contender, Governor Ron DeSantis. So it seems like voters have already baked this into their decision.
That's right, Shannon. So we've seen since the first case was filed against Trump in March in New York that his lead has only grown. But it's important to understand that that is among his base and primary voters in terms of who could turn out for the president. And to note that DeSantis has had some struggles along the way. And this debate coming up on Wednesday is going to be a chance for DeSantis to show whether or not some of the changes he's made in his campaign and at his PAC have actually steadied his case to be president. But as you said, Trump's base has rallied around him when it comes to his legal battles, and he's really combined his legal battles with his effort to become president again.
Well, interesting this morning, there's a deep dive in Politico that talks about the other legal story that we've been following, and this one is with Hunter Biden. The years-long back and forth with the investigation, the talk over a plea deal. At one point, they're reporting that one of Hunter Biden's attorneys said, if you move forward with charges against Hunter, we're going to put President Biden on the stand. Kevin, just the story gets stranger and stranger every day. I mean, truth really in this presidential campaign is stranger than fiction.
It really is. You know, last weekend I was in Iowa, where you are now, Shannon, and just working on policies and ideas with the Republican field. But the invariable comment from Iowans was, contrast how President Trump is being treated, even if they themselves don't plan to vote for him in the Iowa caucus, with how Hunter Biden is being treated. And at Heritage Foundation, we've done a lot of analysis of, for example, David Weiss being the special counsel. He has no business being the special counsel. It's supposed to come from outside the Department of Justice. This is the point. In every single aspect of the Hunter Biden story, he's being treated with kid gloves, while the former president of the United States, I think, in terms of the legal trouble that he is in, almost it seems as if that we're living in a banana republic.
Well, it's interesting to note somebody like former Attorney General Bill Barr, who we've talked to and had on the show many times, will say he does think there is a taint of political persecution to some of this, but that some of these, criminal allegations are serious, legitimate charges, whether that's state or federal. We're now going to have to watch as these all play out. As Lucas had in his reporting, our new poll shows a majority of Americans do think that President Trump did something illegal, but they also have a problem with the Bidens. Here is some polling. When it comes to his foreign business dealings, Hunter Biden, they say 50% believe he did something illegal. 36% believe he did something unethical. So that's 86% who think illegal or unethical. Then when it comes to his son's business dealings, President Joe Biden did something illegal, 38%, something unethical, 25%. Again, 63%, you combine those, think that something illegal or unethical has gone on there with the president. Juan this week talked that Democrats are getting frustrated that President Biden isn't going after President Trump on these indictments. But the fact is both he and his son are under investigation as well.
Well, that's right. I mean, but it's not clear to me that the current president's wayward son and whatever he did, and he may have done something not just wrong but illegal, but it's not as compelling to Democrats as what the former president has done. There's a difference. There's nothing that directly ties any of Hunter's potential wrongdoing directly to President Biden. And, all of Trump's...
Well, as you know, there are Republican members on the Hill who disagree with that. They've yet to come forward with the concrete links, but that's their whole argument, is that it's not just a first son. It's somebody that potentially involves the president as well. We'll wait and see as those investigations continue.
Right, but your point is well taken, that they have yet to come forward with any such evidence. And so there's a difference between saying that you've got a troubled child in your family, that might even generate some sympathy for parents in this country, but I think there's a big difference between that and saying, oh, gosh, this man's been indicted 4 times, and he has a lot of behavior, whether it's the claiming that the 2020 election, falsely claiming that it was stolen, the lies that he tells, this week using the term riggers, in a very racist manner. This can turn off voters. So when you go back to those polls, there are some voters who are committed to Trump, but apparently even in that high number that he currently gets among GOP primary voters, there's some that might be peeled off, and I think that's what we're going to see going into the debate.
Okay, so in the meantime, President Biden's re-election campaign is underway. Our polls also show us he's underwater on nearly every issue.
Underwater. I was hoping Shannon Bream would follow up on what Juan Williams said there about like the racist use of the word riggers. Does anyone know what that was like? I hadn't even heard about that, or I think I might have heard about it, like a vague reference one other news show I was watching. But does anyone have that clip? I should have looked for that clip, but I didn't have time, but I don't know what that was all about. Otherwise, I think I pretty much pre-criticized that clip, the both sidism. I mean, I think I criticized that clip half an hour before I showed it, just showing this legal problems plague both frontrunners in 24 elections, which was basically the whole point of that discussion. And you saw how Shannon Bream combined people who think the 38% who think Trump. The 38% who think Biden did something illegal regarding his son, and then 25% think he did something unethical. So that's like a lot of people think he did something illegal or unethical, but I mean, polls are not the same as evidence, and Trump is under indictment, and prosecutors say they have the evidence to prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in like 4 different jurisdictions, and he's out on bail. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has a son who didn't pay his taxes and lied to get a gun permit in a way that might actually be protected by the Second Amendment, as I talked about last week. And the both sidism is really inaccurate, and Juan Williams, I think, at least pointed it out in a way that you don't hear a lot on Fox News. So I guess at least kudos to Fox News Sunday for letting Juan Williams say that. Or anyway, speaking of Republicans who don't want to say bad things about Donald Trump, this next clip is Jonathan Karl on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos talking to Trump's former vice president, Mike Pence, asking him about this breaking news from Mark Meadows that he never heard about Trump declassifying all this information. And you'll see Mike Pence says he never heard about it either, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. And then a little bit more on the Pence versus Trump stuff. This is the only Mike Pence interview this week, and it was the best ABC clip on my topic, so I'll talk about it a little more after we watch it together over here.
I want to start with our new reporting.
Thank you, John.
I want to start with our new reporting about Mark Meadows. As you know, Donald Trump has claimed that all those documents he took with him to Mar-a-Lago he had declassified. But we are learning that Meadows has told investigators that he knew of no such broad declassification order from Donald Trump. What about you? Had you heard anything to suggest that the president had issued an order, even a standing order, declassifying documents like that?
Well, first off, the handling of classified materials is enormously serious in the life of the nation. But I can't really comment on your reporting, but in my case, I was never made aware of any broad-based effort to declassify documents. There is a process that the White House goes through to declassify materials. I'm aware of that occurring on several occasions over the course of our 4 years, but I don't have any knowledge of any broad-based directive from the president, but that doesn't mean it didn't occur. It's not something that I ever heard about.
And knowing what you knew about how that White House operated, if there had been such a broad order, wouldn't his chief of staff have known about it?
I would expect so, but again, I sure hope we're not getting back into the lane of leaks from the Justice Department about these cases. The special counsel is currently working on investigating Joe Biden's pattern of retaining classified materials. We haven't heard a peep out of that, and I know there's discussion about them making arrangements for President Biden to be interviewed for that. But look, President Trump is entitled to a presumption of innocence. He's entitled to his day in court. And I'm just not going to comment on the latest leak or the latest reporting coming out of that process.
Okay, let me ask you, though, fully taking your point that everybody is presumed innocent until proven guilty. I remember in 2002, you voted to expel James Traficant, not after he was accused, but after he was convicted of a felony on corruption charges. You and virtually every other member of the House voted to expel him, saying that it wasn't right to have a convicted felon as a member of Congress. Would you hold that same standard for the White House?
Well, I would tell you that it is the function of the Congress to determine membership where there's ethical violations. And I remember the Traficant case from about 20 years ago. It was really quite outrageous, John. But if you're saying would I apply that to my former running mate in this race, look, I think that That needs to be left to the American people. Look, let's have the former president have his day in court. Let's maintain a presumption of innocence in this matter and in the other matter that unfolded this week here in Georgia. But I've said many times, John, I would have preferred that these matters be left to the judgment of the American people. I mean, no one's above the law, but with regard to the president's future, my hope is when we get to that debate stage, and I'm still kind of hoping maybe he'll come, is that we could really have a debate about the challenges facing the American people, the issues the American people are facing in the wake of the failed policies of the Biden administration.
And Jonathan Karl did not follow up on one question I had. I noticed this a couple times when I watched that clip. I watched these clips like 3 times. Once when I watched the show, once when I captured the clip, and then the third time I watch it with all of you. And I noticed a couple times there that Mike Pence says that here in Georgia, and my first follow would be, oh, you're in Georgia? Mike Pence? What? Are you in Georgia? Have you been testifying to the grand jury in that case? Or why is Mike Pence in Georgia? Or maybe it was just here in Georgia. Why would you say here in Georgia if you weren't in Georgia? But you saw in that clip that Mike Pence really wouldn't take a position, leave it up to the American voters, presumption of innocence, and trying to bring it back to the issues. And that seems like what most of the Republican candidates are going to be trying to do, especially at this debate that we're going to see on Wednesday. And one of the other candidates was also being interviewed by, but I thought that Jonathan Karl came up with like a novel approach, the whole Jim Traficant thing, the member of Congress who was expelled after he was convicted. I actually am old enough to remember that case, but that he said is like a specific thing that the House of Representatives does. Well, I hope they do that with George Santos, but I talked about that several months ago in regards to George Santos as to how the House can actually expel members, even though one of the guests on that week said that that was not something the House could do. But anyway, Mike Pence is trying to weasel out of taking any position about the wrongdoing of his former boss, Donald Trump. And that is also true of this next guest on Meet the Press, Doug Burgum, the North Dakota governor, who is also going to be introduced to the American public, I guess, on the debate stage, and also won't really, he's going to leave it up to the pundits to give opinions, because just because he's running for president, he shouldn't give his opinion on an important issue. That doesn't even make sense, and Chuck Todd doesn't really follow up on it very well, but I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Since you and I last spoke about a month ago, a couple more indictments have come down on the former president. And I know you want to get to other topics, but I'm curious on the former president. Do you think he did try to overturn the election results in 2020, that he made a concerted effort to do that?
Well, Chuck, this is one of these things. I think there's an entire cable news industry. There's an entire social media industry built around trying to answer that question. And where we're coming from, we're excited to be on the debate stage, the least known candidate on there. If you want to fill this gap where you mentioned 83% of Americans don't trust our institutions, the way that starts is leadership at the top. Any organization I've been involved with, it starts with a leader that you can trust, that's got the character and the integrity, the proven track record of being able to do that. And that's what I've done my whole life in every organization I've been, but people don't know that yet. So we absolutely are going to leave that to this whole industry. We've got to focus on telling our story and telling the story of what we've been able to get done in North Dakota.
You are running for president. You don't think people need to know where you stand on these issues? You're asking to be the next guardrail of the American democracy. At the end of the day, this is the biggest stress test our country's faced in over 100 years.
Yes, and I think part of a stress test, whether it's for Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, everybody's innocent until they're proven guilty in this country, and lots of accusations that are being tossed around. But I think that if we're focused on January is when the first caucuses and primary are. That's when the voters get to decide. I do trust the voters. I trust that if we can show that we're a credible alternative, that we can deliver the things that Americans are looking for, because Americans do want this country to move forward. They want presidential elections to be about the future, a vision for the future. Then we have to offer that. If I'm just one more pundit, criticizing everything that's gone on in 2020, no one's going to see that there's leadership there. So again, presidential campaigns, are about the future, and we're going to paint that picture of how we can improve the economy, energy, and national security. How that's going to improve every American life. How it's going to bring out the best of America. This country's got to move forward, not backwards.
If Donald Trump is convicted of a crime, and you're president, and you had the ability to keep him out of prison, would you? Would you pardon him?
Well, I've been asked this question a bunch, and of course, as sitting governor, I have to, almost smile because as governors, we've got some limited pardonability for people in our own states. But if somebody came up and said, hey, this person's been accused, there hasn't been evidence, there hasn't been one day of a trial in 2025, would you pardon them? Those kind of hypothetical questions, any governor that understands his role would never speculate on that because it hasn't played out. It's like trying to jump ahead of the entire court system. And I respect the judicial branch has got their job. In the executive branch, one thing I know about the executive branch is we work for everybody. When there's a blizzard in North Dakota, we're plowing the roads for Republicans, Independents, Democrats, for everybody. That's the job of the executive branch. That's the job I'm running for.
I want to play something that one of your primary rivals, Governor Ron DeSantis, said about the MAGA movement. Take a listen.
A movement can't be about the personality of one individual. The movement has got to be about what are you trying to achieve on behalf of the American people, and that's got to be based in principle. Because if you're not rooted in principle, if all we are is listless vessels that's just supposed to follow, whatever happens to come down the pike on Truth Social every morning, that's not going to be a durable movement.
Do you share his frustration?
I don't. Our poll numbers are going up, not down. As people get to know us, they understand we've got a great message, again, about how we can, tackle inflation that's choking every American family, how we can start selling energy to our friends and allies, stop buying it from our adversaries, and how we can win the Cold War with China. These are the important topics the president has to focus on. And when we're talking to people, we're excited. As our name recognition goes up, our poll numbers are going up. And so we're very positive, and we're absolutely working to create an alternative, an option for American voters to understand who can lead this country forward.
More with the listless vessels. They love that listless vessels clip on. Well, I've seen that listless vessels clip all over the place. I don't know why the corporate news media loves the listless vessels clip of Ron DeSantis talking about how we can't just follow Trump blindly and be listless vessels. That I never heard that term until this week, and that was weird. But you can see there Doug Burgum, kind of like former Vice President Mike Pence, is trying to weasel out of saying anything bad about Trump because he's trying to get Trump's voters to like him and then amass some other voters as, I don't know, maybe he'll be like a standout sensation at the debate this Wednesday. It's possible I'll be able to do an extra live stream on Thursday or Friday covering the Wednesday debate. And, of course, Donald Trump's counter-programming with Tucker Carlson, maybe. But I didn't want to end the Republican newsmaker clips without showing at least one Republican willing to say that Trump did stuff wrong, especially in the Mar-a-Lago documents case, which is like the most open and shut case of all the cases against Trump. I mean, I'm a former criminal defense attorney, so I still want to see evidence presented to a jury that proves him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But he looks pretty much screwed in that case. And that's something Republican Senator Bill Cassidy admits to. Well, Bill Cassidy is actually one of the senators that voted to convict Trump in the Senate after he was impeached for trying to overturn the election leading up to the January 6th vote certification. Remember the second Trump impeachment, there were like 57 senators voted to convict, not 67, which would have been necessary to actually convict him and make him ineligible to run again. But here's Bill Cassidy, one of the senators who voted to convict him, saying, looks like he did bad things, at least in the Mar-a-Lago documents case, and he should probably drop out. And kudos to Kasie Hunt on CNN for nailing down the Bill Cassidy, Senator Louisiana, says Trump should drop out over in this
So
clip.
let's talk now about the presidential race. We are 72 hours from the first Republican presidential debate. It's going to be missing the frontrunner, Donald Trump, the former president. He is facing federal charges over his efforts to overturn the election. And you did vote to convict him in his impeachment trial after January 6th. You said, quote, because he is guilty. The former Attorney General, Bill Barr, says that the charges that have been brought against him are, quote unquote, responsible. Do you agree?
Well, I'm not an attorney. There's 91 charges, I think. I think the charge that seems most likely, seems almost a slam dunk, is the one related to mishandling of classified documents. So I can't comment on the rest of them because apparently you have to prove state of mind. You'll have attorneys after me that can comment on that. But there's at least one, which is the mishandling of the federal documents, which is seems, again, a very strong case. They have a tape recording of him speaking of it. If that is proven, then we may have a candidate for president who has been convicted of a crime. I think Joe Biden needs to be replaced, but I don't think Americans will vote for someone who's been convicted. I'm just very sorry about how all this is playing out.
Do you think that Donald Trump should drop out of the race?
I think so, but obviously that's up to him. I mean, you're just asking my opinion, but he will lose to Joe Biden if you look at the current polls. I'm a Republican. I think any Republican on that stage in Milwaukee will do a better job than Joe Biden. And so I want one of them to win. If former President Trump ends up getting the nomination but cannot win a general, that means we'll have 4 more years of policies which have led to very high inflation, to a loss of purchasing power for the average American equivalent to $10,000, and to many other things which I think have been deleterious to our country's future.
So yeah, Bill Cassidy is totally wrong on all those issues at the end about how Biden is the cause of inflation and how come the United States has lower inflation than like all the other countries. Like we did so much better than all of the other industrialized countries, especially now. But I think that economic argument's going to fade and fade, but I guess that's one of the unknowns about the upcoming election. That's the last clip on the main topic. And the economy is one of the big unknowns. Is it going to keep getting better? That may be one of the most important things that determines whether we're going to have a Republican president elected next year or whether it's going to be a re-election of Joe Biden or whatever. But there's one other issue that may come back. We all thought COVID was over. Well, maybe some people did, but I mean, I've made many live streams talking about how I continue to be worried about COVID. I'm one of those people, I never even got COVID. As far as I know, at least, I never got COVID. I got like all the vaccinations and never got infected. I've been like slowly moving back to going to some public events without a mask on because one of the things that like convinced me was my healthcare provider, Kaiser Permanente. They like got rid of their their mask restrictions to go into their building. So I'm like, well, if my nonprofit healthcare provider thinks that, but one of the things I kind of worry about is that the end of COVID has been more like political than scientific. I criticize the Trump administration a lot for trying to put political spin on the COVID pandemic, and I don't think the Biden administration has been that much better. A lot of the decisions they've made have been to try to downplay the political impact of the ongoing pandemic, which, our vaccination rates aren't that high, and the mutation rate is pretty significant. That's what this next clip is about. Scott Gottlieb, who, to be fair, he is on the board of Pfizer, so he's like profits from vaccines, I guess, but he's talking about the new COVID vaccine that's going to be available in a few weeks and how it may or may not actually help us against this new variant that has this new mutation that apparently its like big superpower is that it can infect people who've been vaccinated or had COVID before. So are we screwed? Well, maybe it's less virulent. It might not be as bad in terms of its effects, and we don't have as good as of a now that the COVID emergency is over, you have to have insurance if you want to get a vaccine, and people aren't even getting vaccinated anyway. And there's some question as to whether the vaccines that are coming out in a few weeks even protect against this new variant. And anyway, that's the last. If there's like a new upsurge in COVID, that could like totally throw off the whole 2024 election and be really bad for Biden. That's the reason I wanted to include it. Maybe it is the biggest story. CBS was the best coverage of COVID at the beginning, so maybe they're the best coverage here when people think it's over, and I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that final news clip together today over here.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation.
Sorry. Oh, wrong clip. Here it is.
I want to start on some news we got Thursday. The CDC announced a highly mutated strain of COVID has just shown up in Michigan, BA 2.86. How concerned does the public need to be?
Well, right now, I've talked to a number of virologists who are usually pretty staid, and they're pretty concerned about this. Right now, it doesn't appear to be spreading widely. There's 7 strains that have been identified and sequenced in 5 different countries, so the UK, Denmark, Israel, and now in the US. We don't know whether or not this has been spreading quietly and we just didn't detect it, or it's something that's spreading very quickly. The concern is that when you look at these different strains that have been identified, they're genetically very similar. So that suggests that it's probably spreading simultaneously in multiple countries. Whether or not this is going to be more transmissible than what we've seen before, that's the key question. Certainly at this point, it doesn't appear more pathogenic, so it doesn't appear to be more dangerous, but it may be more transmissible than the strains that are circulating now, and in that case, it could overtake them. It's too early to know. The testing's underway. I think we're going to know a lot more in a week or two. But to, again, put this in perspective, this new variant is as genetically different from Omicron as Omicron was from the original strain that emerged in Wuhan. So this is a highly mutated variant.
And that set off some alarm bells at that time. So we will watch this, but for people at home who say, oh my gosh, I've heard someone has COVID, the strain that's causing most infections is not this one.
Right. So right now, the 2 strains that are circulating causing most of the infections is what's called EG5. People have probably heard about that. It's called the Eris strain. And this other strain, FL151. They both have a very similar mutation in them called the 456 mutation that allows them to pierce the immunity that we've acquired from prior infections and also from prior vaccinations. So people are getting infected with that. The good news is that where we are right now relative to where we were last summer when BA5 was spreading is a lot better. So there's far fewer infections. We have probably roughly about 600,000 infections a day happening based on the modeling work that's been done looking at wastewater data. And there's about 10,000 people that have been hospitalized in the last week. And to compare that to last year at this point, we had 40,000 people hospitalized, and we were running probably about 1.2 million infections a day.
Well, for those strains, there is a booster shot that I know Pfizer has talked about coming to market soon. It's still not available. When do we expect it, and does it protect against these variants.
Right. So the data looks like the new booster, which is based on BA 1.15, which was the strain that emerged last spring, looks like it will protect against these new variants. Now, my guess is these new variants, this infection rate from this wave of infection from EG5 is going to be coming down by the time the new vaccine's available, which is going to be mid-September. So September 12th has been the date that they've talked about, but it's going to be some point in mid-September that these will be widely accessible in pharmacies and other health departments, and so people can go out and get it. There's studies underway right now, what's called neutralization studies, basically laboratory studies, to look at whether the new vaccine also covers this BA.286 variant that you talked about at the top of the show. And we'll have that data by the time the new vaccines become available. So by the time these are out in September, consumers will know how well it covers that new variant. We'll also probably know whether or not it's spreading.
And Moderna has one, and perhaps
and Pfizer,
others.
and Novavax as well.
And Novavax. So what's different as we go into the fall and back to school is that the federal government emergency programs have largely stopped. So people have to actually plan getting their vaccine. You can't get them for free everywhere. How is that going to impact what the season looks like ahead?
Yeah, so insurers are going to cover these vaccines in the same way they cover flu vaccines for people who have insurance. For people who are underinsured or uninsured, the administration has a program where people are going to be able to get these for free at pharmacies. That program should be up and running by the time these vaccines become available, and they'll also be free of charge at federally qualified community health centers and also public health departments day one. So they should be widely accessible. It doesn't mean there's not going to be gaps in coverage in people who face certain hardships, but broadly, most people should be able to get these free of charge without a copay based on what I'm seeing right now from the insurance companies.
Of course, they have to choose to get them. And we know, 17% of the population took the booster shot, according to the CDC, last time around. Why does someone need to continue to update?
Yeah, look, I think we have to have a lot of humility around this virus. There's a lot we don't understand, and it's continuing to surprise us, as it is with this BA.286 mutation. But this does look like it's going to be a flu-like paradigm where there's going to be new variants that emerge each year. Hopefully we'll guess right in terms of how we formulate the vaccines, but you're going to need updated protection like you do from flu to try to match the vaccine against the variants that's circulating. People are still going to have residual immunity from prior infection and prior vaccination that protects them against severe disease, probably even if they don't get vaccinated. But if you want to update that protection and also get more protection against the possibility of infection, you will need to keep up to date with your vaccine. The flu vaccine, by the way, is available right now.
Should you get it right now?
I think people should wait. I think mid-September is probably a good time to get it. There's very little flu right now. Only 1% of the respiratory samples that were sequenced by CDC are actually flu, so there's very little spreading. It does look like the flu vaccine is going to be a good match for the prevalent strain based on what we see in South America. South America is usually a good harbinger for our flu season. So that it does look like that's going to be a good vaccine this year based on some preliminary judgments right now.
So, I mean, I'm someone who's gotten my flu vaccine for many years, and I guess maybe we'll start getting the COVID vaccine, although this COVID vaccine may not. I guess we'll find out in the next few weeks if this new COVID vaccine is going to be protective against BA.286. BA.286, that's what we have to be worried about, apparently. How come no one's talking about BA.286? We should all be talking about BA.286 and how maybe that's going to be the thing that decides the 2024 election if there's like some big upsurge in COVID over the fall and the winter. And I don't know, maybe it could happen. I couldn't really tell you, but I think that it's something we should consider, and I'll definitely be getting additional vaccinations next month when they become available, and hopefully the new vaccination for COVID will be as protective as the flu vaccines sometimes are, and apparently, according to what's happening in South America, the flu vaccine is at least good this year. Maybe it'll take some years before the COVID vaccine is as good as the flu vaccine is this year. Or anyway, I just wanted to end the program with that clip, not on the main topic, but also maybe the most important topic. You never know. I mean, what's more important than your health? That's what they always say, right? That nothing's more important than your health. So that's why I ended the show with that clip. I may, like I said, try to do a live clip roundup about the Republican debate or Trump's counter programming or combining them possibly on Thursday or Friday. So look for that. I'm not promising that, but I am promising to keep doing my Monday Media Mix-Up every Monday all the way through January 2025 when we figure out who gets certified as the either newly elected president or the re-elected president for the next term after Joe Biden's first term. And so I'll be back every Monday giving you that. I'll possibly upload some other videos when I have a chance and maybe cover the Republican debate and Trump's counter programming. But until then, I guess I will just be seeing all of you around the internet.